I'm going to call to order the Economic Development Commission meeting today for the city of Bloomington. The date today is Tuesday, June 15th, 2022, and it's just about 4 p.m. So that's call to order, and we'll do the roll call. So Malcolm Webb, Kurt Zorn,
Vanessa McClary,
Jeff McCammon,
Alex Crowder,
Jane Cooper-Smith,
Rick Deeks.
okay, and in the audience we have
Larry Allen, legal. Christopher MV, Bloomington Chamber. IT staff.
okay.
Jared Moore, Comcast.
Thank you.
Dave Askin, East Bridgewater.
Sorry, last
Dave Askin, East Bridgewater.
got it. Okay, thank you. All right.
I believe you said the 15th when you called it to order, would you?
That's actually what it says on the agenda. All right, it's the 14th. Today's Flag Day. I was just reading it off the agenda. Sorry, Jane.
Yeah.
I actually know it's 14th because I know it's Flag Day. It's Flag Day.
Flags?
Forgot to put the flag up. I don't know. So we have no minutes, I'm assuming, Jane, is that correct?
None today.
And we have no old business. But we do have new business, and the new business is a resolution on the Meridian TIF request. All right, and I think we'll just jump right into the presentation.
Just really quickly,
Yeah.
just ahead of that, so
Yeah.
this item is actually an approval of a project expenditure and financing agreement, just so you all know. So that's, you can issue economic development bonds. Part of that kind of financing is you can also approve a financing agreement for this type of project. In this case, instead of issuing bonds, the dedication will be 95% of an allocation area of revenues. To do this, does require a public hearing, so we'll need to call to order a public hearing before hearing your presentation. Also, just quickly note, I sent an email prior to this meeting that there is an amendment just based on the feedback that we received from some commissioners to the resolution, to the report that the EDC would be issuing today, and it's to change section 2 specifically of the resolution, and I think it's section E of the report. Originally, it read that pull it up so I don't mistake. Set here. Originally, it had a finding that you found that there's no material adverse competitive effect on any similar facilities already constructed or operating near the city of Bloomington. That's a common finding. However, it's not a requiring finding of the statute. And actually, what the statute calls for is that you all consider any potential material adverse competitive effect on any similar facilities already constructed in Bloomington. So we've basically changed that to mirror the statutory code, just to be a little bit more accurate, but just so you're aware, in this public hearing, that is one of the things that we asked to consider and to hear a presentation on and investigate with questions. I just wanted to make that update. But Mr. President, if you would call
Yes,
to order
so
the public hearing.
Per Larry's suggestion, I will call this public hearing to order.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I think we should start with the presentation.
And Rick Deeds will be presenting on this for us today.
As soon as share the screen. Right, well, I want to thank you all for being here and listening to this presentation. I'll cover the overall project that we are working on and start with a few definitions so that we have some common language in terms that will be repeated throughout the presentation in our discussion. So first is an open access network. That is a network in which the owner and maintainer of that network is not itself an ISP. They are maintaining the network and the equipment, as a service, and then any number of ISPs can use network neutrality. It's also known as
Richmond, you just find what an ISP is. Just
ISP, Internet Service Provider.
Okay.
A business that's providing internet access directly to end users. Network neutrality is the principle that internet service providers should treat information traveling through their network equally and not discriminate against content. There's digital equity is the fair distribution of internet and modern technology throughout society. This has been a major area of focus for my department, ITS, as well as the city over the course of the past few years since the pandemic, largely, and is one of the most important facets of this project. Fiber optic cable is what we're talking about. This network will be built with fiber optic cable in which strands are combined into bundles. In the case of the city, we have 96 strand bundles through our existing conduit network that serves a number of city buildings. Fiber optic cable is the premier technology for network construction and delivery. It's scalable. Almost infinitely is probably not the right word, but really once you have the glass cables in place, the speed of the network is dependent only on the equipment that you put at both ends. So you can move things slow, and as technology improves, you'll be able to utilize the very same network at faster and faster speeds as new equipment and technology comes available. So it's a future-proof type of technology, and that's one of the reasons why we tried to make this happen. Fiber optic cable can be installed underground as well as aerially. You'll see that in one of the service maps that we'll show later. And it really is, again, the basis for modern future-looking network construction. So overall, why are we here? The city has long sought, going back as far as 2016 and really even earlier, to ensure that Bloomington residents and business have a ubiquitous, community-wide, affordable, high-speed fiber connectivity. This is important to secure, for all of us to be able to secure the benefits of modern technology, including the education, healthcare, employment, entertainment, personal engagement benefits, regardless of income and geography. Those are key elements that feed into the digital divide and our intention to do as much as we can to address those digital equity gaps. We're also important is to enhance Bloomington's competitiveness as a leading innovative community and an epicenter for technology development. So the current state, the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, defines broadband at 25 download and 3 megabits upload. That isn't adequate or really acceptable or usable in many circumstances for the kind of uses that we need. Our digital equity strategic plan, as we have moved forward with that, has revealed that there are inequities in our community, particularly amongst low-income residents, but also families with children and older residents are impacted by these issues as well. We found in our research a homework gap which impacts disproportionately low-income students with low-speed connections. And many residents, many households can only access the internet through their phones. So we also found reliable, we also know now, certainly and even more clearly, that reliable high-speed internet is increasingly a work requirement. And that's not just for individuals who primarily work remotely, but for individuals who don't, who need to be able to connect to their office and do their work at all times. We found the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted in very stark terms for us that the continuing equity gaps that we identified before and during the pandemic, are a continuing problem that needs to be addressed. And we also know that the current provider subsidy programs are not attracting all of the users that they should. They're not marketed with the passion that they should be, and they don't go far enough in terms of what's actually being provided to the low-income recipients of those services. So, competition. It's understandable that incumbent providers don't want greater competition. That raises the question of, is there a right number in our marketplace? Is it 2 providers, not 3, 3, not 4, 1, not 2? We believe that regardless the current status quo is not meeting the goals of our community, and greater competition will help with that. Meridian's open access network that they're proposing not only will bring an additional ISP player into the market, but as an open access provider after an exclusive period with a new ISP, their network will be open up to all providers, including existing incumbents who may utilize that network to expand their reach, as well as new market entrants. So after the exclusivity period, any of us around the table, if we wanted to start an ISP, would have the reach into all of the residences and businesses that the Meridian network connects to. And that doesn't just go for the city of Bloomington. It would also include all of the communities who we have brought along in this process: Columbus, Shelbyville, and Martinsville, who will also have Meridian networks built as the project moves forward. So we believe that this significantly enhances competition to the benefit of our community, and not just our community, but 3 other of our neighboring communities. One thing that we hear a lot from providers is that they do have high speed, but those are almost always marketed as up to a certain amount. We provide up to 50 megabits, up to 100 megabits. At least in my experience, during the pandemic, it was rare that my provider actually hit that target, and sometimes painfully so. Also, we hear, oh, we're going to do that in a few years. We'll be there in a few years. Our technology, we're upgrading. It's going to be faster, but that continues to be an elusive promise. We'll tell you a little bit of our story of this process. Some of you may recall, others might not, but we began this as a public process with a symposium and then issuing a request for information in 2016. We received 21 responses to our RFI, which we whittled down through a series of meetings to 12, 6, 4, 2, and then 1, and that 1 was Axia. We were very excited about the potential of that partnership, but they were purchased by a large investment firm who then altered their market targets away from communities like Bloomington. We've had conversations with a number of other parties that both inside and outside of the RFI process, which led us to Metric, which also looked promising to us, but they merged with another company and then didn't see our market as being as attractive as we thought it was. Throughout this process, we have engaged within the RFI and outside with our local incumbent providers who generally have not been pursuing citywide fiber to the premise actively and not aligned with our other goals, including open access, network neutrality, and digital equity. Then in March of 2020, our world changed with the advent of the COVID pandemic and the shutdowns that again revealed the criticality of this kind of connectivity to our daily lives. Coincidentally, we had already begun the process of conducting a digital equity survey and a strategic plan which completed in 2020 that revealed a lot of the information I've cited earlier. And then also in 2020, towards the tail end, we began conversations with a company called Wired, W-Y-Y-E-R-D. Those negotiations were quite close as well, but they fell apart when Wired was also purchased by a large investment firm, which then changed their market targets as well. However, professional relationships between Wired and Meridian existed, and that Wired was more than happy to share the diligence that they had acquired through multiple site visits in Bloomington and conversations about our community. That helped bootstrap the conversations with Meridian. And then in August of 2021, we signed a letter of intent with Meridian, which outlined some of our mutual objectives and essentially indicated that, yes, we thought this could be a fruitful partnership. We'll begin negotiations in earnest. From then until the present, we have been working on a master agreement with Meridian, the joint digital equity initiative. We've inventoried our city conduit assets. There have been multiple site visits, hundreds of meetings to coordinate their diligence and our work on the agreement, which has led us to this point. And I will share with you a little bit about Meridian and then the proposed project. Meridian's an international public infrastructure developer, investor, and manager. They are based in France with their US headquarters in New York City. They are a mission-driven firm, a benefit corporation, which means that they have an equal responsibility, equal fiduciary responsibility to their investors, most of which are retirement funds, long-term investment funds, and to environmental, social, and corporate governance goals, as well as a number of UN Sustainable Development goals, in which they have essentially baked into their operations. So when a decision comes up, it's not always based on what is the most financially lucrative path. It's one that satisfies both their financial responsibilities and their social responsibilities. Their general areas of focus as a business are in transportation, energy transformation, and fiber. We have crafted, with them a long-term agreement with a long-term oriented partner who is interested in assuring Bloomington's advancement into the future. Meridian has never sold an asset that they have built or bought. Again, they are in the infrastructure that they invest in, they are in for the long haul, and they are in the communities for the long haul. We found that they are, among all of the providers that we have talked to over the years, many dozen, they are a uniquely good fit with our fiber goals, with our digital equity goals, and with our broader community values. So the program project we are Meridian is proposed and we are supporting is a gigabit plus speed fiber optic network, an open access network. Again, Meridian is not an ISP. After a time limited exclusive period, the network will be open to other ISPs. They're proposing a greater than $50 million investment, including, I believe, between 10 and 12 new jobs, a Bloomington office, which will serve the Bloomington network as well as the Columbus, Shelbyville, and Martinsville networks. They're proposing full community coverage. The number that we have in our contract is 85%, but we fully expect it to be significantly higher than that. Indeed, the objectives for Meridian are around 100, but we recognize that there are maybe some geographic challenges as well as access to areas through private rights of way that that the city can't guarantee. The cost of the ISP service will be competitive within our marketplace. It has to be. They need customers. They have to compete, not just and compete on price. They have guaranteed network neutrality protections. There's protection for the city's interest and a voice at the table. The agreement commits them to being in market for no less than 10 years. And then if they wish to transfer the network to another party, that goes through a number of steps that the city needs to approve. It's a very unique relationship. Again, the regional impact extends to some of our neighboring communities, which we are happy to bring along in this process. The build will start this year and conclude in 3 years or less if we are able to move forward with this. The city generally has been focused on the residential marketplace, particularly with our digital equity concerns, but they fully intend to compete in the business marketplace as well, offering Bloomington businesses another broadband option, but one that is entirely backed by fiber. And then we have crafted a very robust, groundbreaking digital equity initiative, which for income qualifying households would provide 250 megabits up and down service, symmetrical service with no connection fee, will essentially be $0 a month for those households, $30 a month from the ISP, offset by $30 from the Biden-Harris Affordable Connectivity Program subsidy. Meridian is planning to establish a digital equity staff position in Bloomington, which will work to connect income qualifying households to the network. They will contribute $85,000 to the city's digital equity fund, which the city will be able to use to address other areas of digital equity beyond simply the connectivity pillar of the leg of the stool, but also will include work with help with devices, help with training as well. Those are potential areas that we may invest in. The Digital Equity Initiative is available to all Bloomington Housing Authority apartment complexes, every unit in those. And then eligibility for the program is, we have simplified this. We're not going, don't want to create a new, new eligibility program or metric. So we're relying on eligibility for the services that you see here, the SNAP, HUD housing vouchers, also referred to as Section 8 vouchers, Indiana Department of Education free and reduced meals, and a number of others that we have negotiated over the course of months to include. We believe this is a very expansive and potentially transformative program for those who are eligible for it, and we're very proud of it. Quickly, this digital equity initiative addresses a number of recommendations within our digital equity strategic plan, and then this quote from one of our consultants and partners in this project highlights the transformative aspect of this program, which provided that we are able to move forward with this initiative with your support, would be among the, if not the best digital equity offering in the United States. City's overall contributions to this project include $1 million pledge from the city to start our digital equity fund. We will be active partners in the digital equity initiative. We've pledged to provide excess unused conduit from our the city's fiber network, which connects a number of our facilities, and the purpose of this meeting to move forward with tax reduction from this TIF proposal on the order of $10.9 million for that. So this TIF district request goes through a number of bodies, and including the EDC here, the Redevelopment Commission, the Plan Commission, Economic Development Commission, and the City Council. Meridian supported has requested the establishment of this TIF district, and the city supports the creation of the allocation area to cover the business personal property of Meridian as they install their fiber infrastructure and network throughout the city. The taxes collected in the TIF would be transferred to Meridian by the city. This is needed to facilitate the build and to achieve the objectives of Meridian and the city in this project. Business personal property in this case includes the conduit, fiber optic cable, electronics, equipment, and other items. This kind of TIF, as you may have heard, when it's applied, the telecom infrastructure is sometimes referred to as a spider TIF because it follows the pattern of the network in the community. The total TIF value across 20 years is estimated at $10.9 million minus administrative fees that the city will collect to administer the TIF. The boundary of the TIF is essentially the corporate boundary of the city of Bloomington.
Look, you might interject.
Oh, please do.
I want to draw a line here for the EDC. So, you all, this part of the process, you're not being asked to approve the TIF. So that's the part that goes through the redevelopment commission, went to the plan commission, and then will ultimately be decided of the city council. It'll also go back to the RDC for a public hearing and kind of a resolution thing. Your aspect of this is these financing agreements kind of create the mechanism by which we can share. I'm sorry, can you not actually close the door? I'm sorry, Jane. Specifically, just in case anybody wants to come in, I want to make sure that they can see what's happening here. Mike, excuse me, my apologies. Sorry, Jane, thank you very much. I know it's because it was noisy and I appreciate that. The thing that's being asked to do here is it's creating the mechanism by which we can share the TIF revenue. So there has to be a project agreement that kind of commits to financing the project. So that's under your all's provision. So similar to what we discussed with those economic development bonds, except in this case, it's just a project agreement where the source of revenue will be any TIF revenue collected. As Rick had mentioned, this is a business personal property TIF. So the only revenue really is if Meridian delivers installs network throughout the city. That's the only way it can generate that increment to be captured. What we are pledging here is 95% of that increment. It's estimated over the life of the 20 years of that district that it'll be around that $10.9 billion amount. It's not guaranteed, of course, because again, it's up to Meridian to invest that and to declare for their business personal property. The two agreements, though, that support that are the ones that are in front of you today. It's the one's a conditional expenditure agreement, which essentially says you're in support of this project, you find that it's for the public health and benefit of the community to undertake this, and that the maximum expenditure amount that could possibly go towards this project is 95% of those TIF revenues. And then there's a financing agreement that kind of lays out the terms of how that could be doled out, what would happen if certain things go awry in that financing as well, and kind of support that master development agreement, which we've been talking about. I know that's a lot of moving parts to hear orally, but I appreciate it. I just wanted to draw that line about the role here for you factor in this process.
So I know I'm the chairperson right now, and I have some questions about specifics of the TIF, but maybe we should let the presentation complete. But yes, I want to know a little bit.
Yeah, we're not too far.
Okay.
So visually, like what you're seeing is the proposed map. I'm not a real big fan of the spider TIF nomenclature because it really doesn't look like a spider to me, but it's spidering in some respects. But that's what the this draft of the network looks like.
So what are we seeing up here other than the city?
City of
Significance to the
Bloomington,
color there?
and then aerial and underground, proposed aerial.
So
and
what is the
underground.
brown and what is the blue?
The brown, red is underground fiber and conduit, and the blue is aerial installed fiber on utility poles.
And that's what's currently in place, or what is?
No, this is
That's
what's
what they're
proposed.
planning.
Yes,
Okay,
this is
thank you.
the-
That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, when this is developed out at maturity, this would be
Thanks.
the property that is covered by the. So why use a TIF for this project? Firstly, it's necessary to support it. The project itself would not happen without the TIF funding. There is no tax increase to the public from this TIF, no drop in funding for other taxing units because of it. Plus, we do anticipate that there will be new revenue generated from the business activities of Meridian in the community, including from employment, various property rental and other exchange of dollars within the community. So why the business personal property tax TIF? It's a transparent process. We have, as you know, many meetings in this step, in this process, and providing visibility, as well as the various committees are looking at different aspects of the project. We have this gives the city visibility into the tax. The tax comes essentially to us, and then we transfer it to Meridian, allowing us to capture the 5% administrative cost that Larry mentioned as well. This is a fairly common practice. This is really just a tiny slice over the last few years of communities that have employed a business personal property tax TIF district within their communities. Again, just a few years, so it's pretty substantial as you keep digging. And then Crawfordsville, Wabash, Lafayette, Franklin, Huntington, Lebanon, and Manchester have utilized this kind of business personal property tax TIF for telecommunications, which would essentially fall under the category of the spider TIF. This has gone through and is going through a public process. We've been working through multiple ups and downs since 2016. We've had multiple close calls, but we've kept working We published the LOI last fall with Meridian, indicating our intent to negotiate this agreement and outlining a number of our objectives, which we have been able to realize. Through our negotiations with Meridian. The negotiations like this for any business who wants to locate in Bloomington are going to be sensitive and require some level of discretion, but once we reached agreement in principle in the major areas, we announced the agreement publicly with council members present. The TIP process, as I mentioned, runs through a number of bodies. All of the documents that are part of this this process are public and available on the city's website. The letter of intent, all of the TIP documents for each board and commission, the map, and then the legal agreement as well. And all city staff connected with this have made themselves available to questions from the council, the various boards, and the public, and there have been multiple articles and editorials in the local press. In summary, what we are proposing to establish with Meridian is a community-wide gigabit fiber to the premise network that is open access after an exclusivity period, to be built by a unique partner, Meridian, which is a benefit corporation committed to sustainability and equity. Part of this package is a groundbreaking digital equity program, 250 megabits up and down with no starting fees, $0 a month for income eligible households, which we believe will have a significant impact on the digital divide in our community. We've essentially been able to attract a high-tech company to Bloomington who wants to invest over $50 million in local infrastructure, including the creation of new jobs. The network will be operated by Hoosier Networks LLC, which will be headquartered in Bloomington to support the Indiana operations in Bloomington, Columbus, Shelbyville, and Martinsville. There's no tax increase using the TIP financing methods and negligible impact to other taxing units. And we thank you for your consideration of this and having a voice in this process, and look forward to answering any questions that you might have.
Okay, so questions from board commission members.
I'll start. I got a bunch, so we'll go around. So just on the statute, the process that we're following to approve the financing agreement, is that the 36-712? Essentially the one that talks about bond, economic development commission and bond financing?
Yeah, so if you, we kind of cited that whole chapter, there's definitions in 11 point. Just to be clear, all the documents are going to refer to both of those chapters, just be all encompassing, because those are requirements. If you look at subsection or section 25, so 12.25, specifically there's ability of financing, just a financing agreement is kind of contemplated in there. So it doesn't have to be just bonds, it's kind of bonds, obligations, and also this financing agreement.
Okay, thanks. It's just most of the statute refers to bonds. I just want to make sure.
That's right. Yeah.
So the exclusivity period, when does it start?
I believe it starts with the I'm not entirely sure. It may either be at the start of the contract or the start of the first customers on the network, but we can check into that. I think Kate is also connected into this meeting. She may be able to go and answer later.
I mean, what I'm trying to get at more is it relatively early in the contract, or is it only when the complete build out is done?
I don't know. No, it's not.
Because that'd be
Not
quite a
at the
bit.
yeah. Before that.
I don't want to monopolize.
Good.
Apartment complexes. So you mentioned the BHA apartment complexes. get them. What about just for other apartment complexes? Is it just up to the landlord to wire the individual?
Yeah, those are private facilities, and it would be, the landlord owner of any multi-dwelling unit would need to want to enter into a contract, for that to be possible.
And then you pointed out the inadequacy of the 25.3 standard. Do you have a sense of how many residents in the city of Bloomington have no access to higher, better service than the inadequate FCC standard? Who's really being underserved versus it's just not subscribing?
Yeah, I think there's a mix. We have a number of local, providers, some of whom are, exceeding, those, but when you look at the broadband maps, they're usually looking at that definition of availability. But, Comcast, for instance, generally has, higher speeds available as the beneficiary, at least in my terms of being subject to our cable franchise requirements, rolling the clock back about 11 years when we could do that. We required Comcast to provide their cable service everywhere. So that, so that is available, but they are also one of the providers, and they're, my provider, who offers the up to 100 megabit criteria, but often doesn't meet that in practice.
That Kate had tried to unmute her so that she could weigh in on that question. That should be okay for you.
Oh, okay, hang on.
Once the ISP starts operating.
Hey, can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it was flashing on and off, allowing me to unmute or not. So just in response to your question, Jeff, about when does the exclusivity period start? I went ahead and typed it in the chat as well, but under the agreement, that would start at the earliest of either Meridian passing what we call substantial completion in the agreement, which is 85% of premises, or the time that service is first offered on the system. So in other words, it doesn't have to wait for the system to be fully built out before that would begin if service starts on the system.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Currently, Meridian expects, if this process moves forward at the pace that we are trying to see it move forward, that they will, by the end of the year, have customers using that.
The end of this year.
Yeah.
Thank you. I do, but I really don't want. I want to give other people a chance to talk. I know you said you had
I'm
questions.
gonna ask you the
so
nuances about the tip. That's all.
I got questions about the tip too.
Because I'm a finance guy. So do I? I'm assuming I direct you.
You can, we also have outside counsel here.
Yeah. So I'm familiar with this standard tip, which is basically a geographic area. You capture the increment to assess value after the tip is established. So this is a little bit different because I'm assuming that this is all being put down on public right-of-ways, right? So how do you capture the value? Because I think I understand the company's going to pay the tax, city's going to take 5%, and there you get 95% rebate, effectively, correct?
That's correct.
But I'm a little curious about how this spider, and spider does make sense because it's sort of spiders around. It doesn't. It's not just a a geographic area.
This is personal property, not real estate.
That's correct, yeah.
Right, but it's the same. It's the same idea of this is personal property. You allow the company to come in and put equipment in, and you get the enhancement. So, talk a little bit about how you do that.
So there's two pieces, or probably more than two pieces, but at least two pieces to this. First of all, typically just under the default, the RDC doesn't capture this as personal property. They typically only capture real property, which kind of is where you're going with this in terms of geographic boundaries. In this case, if it wants to capture this personal property in an allocation area, it has to name a specific taxpayer. And the reason why it has to do that is because that's how we track where that system is through their. And so essentially in this regard, the allocation area, or the TIF area, as we colloquially call it, exists only where that equipment exists. And the way we know where it exists, so there's kind of there's kind of two parts to that, and I'm sure our outside counsel will weigh in if I'm mistaken in any way. First part is essentially for the county, they'll create a virtual parcel that gets overlaid to track where that goes based on the way the filing happened. And then secondly, I mean, you have to rely on those filings. So it's very similar, whatever they pay into their business critical properties, that's how we know where it is. But it doesn't exist in that like very strict geographic sense. And that was one of the questions we got in terms of the standard rule is you can't pancake TIFs, which means you can't have a parcel of real estate that exists in two allocation areas. But because this only covers personal property and have like kind of that virtual parcel added on, it doesn't fall within that rule. So it's kind of a standalone thing.
And that was one of my questions indirectly was, you know, if you're doing this for the whole city.
Yeah.
You obviate the ability to do TIFs elsewhere, and you're just telling you probably not, you're talking about virtual.
Right. And you're also naming a taxpayer. So
Yes.
if you happen to have equipment that's located geographically on top of or somewhere else, you know, you're not capturing that other equipment either. It's just from this taxpayer. So in this case, that taxpayer is going to be Hoover Networks LLC. That's the local.
That helps a lot. And I'm assuming that the comment, a nominal effect on other taxpayers is theoretically, if you weren't putting this in the TIF, that 10.9 would be allocated to taxing districts that cover these virtual areas.
Yeah,
So
assuming
that's
the
the
investment will
cost.
be made.
That's the cost it's gonna have in other.
That's right. And I believe that we calculated that. I think it's something, Rick, you may have those numbers up. It's like 0.0003.
Multiple
I mean,
zeros.
it's very, very.
And then the argument, the activity won't happen if you don't have a TIF in
Right,
the first place.
yeah,
So I
that's
I
the
understand.
It's probably close to zero.
I just wanted to. Helps clarify. Thank you.
So that mostly answered my tip related questions. Thank you. But what the big concern was, would there, you know, if somebody else's fiber was lying right next to this fiber, would their money be going to subsidize the competitor? So the answer is no.
That's exactly right. We'd have to do the same process for that other taxpayer.
Okay. Would this investment be made without the tip?
No.
Okay. You had to say that, but I had to ask. What's the necessary take rate to make this a going concern?
I can't speak to that. We might have someone from Meridian who wants to, but I'll take a stab at it. The target that we have for the primary ISP, which would be subject to the exclusive period, is if they are able to essentially hit 35%, after 5 year, after locations that are in the market for 5 years, then they are able to extend their exclusivity period another year and then another year. So it could go from 5 to 7, but that's based on performance. So they have to hit that 35% target. I think, again, I don't want to speak for Meridian, on that, but that's a goal to ensure that the network is, viably funded and supported.
Well, so I guess the reason why I'm really asking that question is that to hit that 35%, presumably they would have to take away some business from existing incumbents. They couldn't hit that 35% simply by hitting only unserved, unsubscribed households right now, could they?
Well, that's up to Scott Lehman once in from Meridian, if we could allow him in.
I'm so sorry. Right.
And I would just say, I think you can speak to this, but I think it's probably a mix. Again, because one of the main focal areas is low income. The population, which some are online, but a lot aren't. I think there's a lot of traction that you can make just in that area.
It's just that statutorily, it sounds like we do have to consider competition. And I appreciate that the change to the resolution. But I think we do need to have that as part of the discussion.
Okay, and Meridian has unmuted.
Scott, are you?
So if you want to, yeah, I tried to get in. If you want to repeat the question, to make sure that I get a proper response.
Well, I guess the really the first question was just about what the take rate is to to make this a going concern, but I think more importantly, how much business from existing incumbents would that involve, or would that potentially involve? That's the impact on competition.
I mean, we would come in and we would expect to take a percentage of the business from the existing service providers. And we would, our competitive position would be that we're providing a fiber-based, high-speed network offer. One of the things you'll hear is, and I'll digress for 1 second here, is people will talk about broadband availability, but broadband availability can be 25/3, which wouldn't be sufficient enough to even join this call. We're looking at bringing in speeds that can go up to, that'll be a minimum of at least 100 or 1 gig to start. And our technology can scale to 10 gig as required in the marketplace. So yes, we'll be taking some market share from the incumbents quite clearly, but we will be doing so as we bring the next level of technology into Bloomington, not the technology that was deployed 30 years ago, but the technology will take Bloomington into the next 20 and 30 years as speeds are required to increase.
Thank you. But 35% is essentially the success metric in the exclusivity.
Well, that's for the exclusivity. And that's something that was put in place so that it's been very important to the mayor and the office is to make sure this network gets opened up. And what they wanted to identify is if the existing provider is not doing well, they want a really strong, third party coming in, that partner has to be doing extremely well and be accepted by the community. And that would be how we would define the success that would allow them to continue. If they're at 10%, that means the market has not really received the product and the customer service levels that we need to take a look at bringing somebody else who can. If they've got 50% of the market, that would be, an indication that they've done an exceptional job in the market competing against the incumbents, and they have not been able to compete at the same level. So that's where we came up with that level.
Beth, Kate, you should be able to unmute.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to hop on to the tail end of Scott's comment in terms of exclusivity, just to clarify for you all that no matter what, that exclusivity period ends after 7 years. Now, what Scott's talking about is hitting a 35% metric to enable 1 and potentially 2 years extension of the original 5-year exclusivity period. After that, it's open access network.
Thank you.
Other questions from? Thank you.
I mean, I got more, but okay.
No, I'm learning. Keep going.
Okay. So you mentioned a $50 million investment from Meridian. How much of that is capital that comes from the outside, say from Meridian's investors, versus how much is that just fees paid by local internet users, subscribers to the new ISP that's created? I guess, in other words, how much new capital is being brought, that 50 million, how much new capital is being brought into the community?
At least 50 million in new capital is being brought to this project.
You said at least 50 million?
Yes. During the construction phase, we're not accounting for the revenue that comes in to offset the construction. We are fully funding this project, which is an important point, and I'm glad you brought it up. We fully fund the capital budget day one. So this isn't something that's in phases or projects. That is our commitment to the market, the commitment based on our discussions with the city.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's an important answer. I agree. Why not make the bandwidth for the income qualified tier just the same as the premium tier? Wouldn't that be kind of a, I don't know, a blow for digital equity?
I think in terms of what we're doing here is well beyond what's being done by any incumbent and in any community that we are aware of. There are certainly, this is a partnership, with Meridian and also with its prospective ISP. And so I don't know, if Scott wants to speak with that, but we felt that being better than any other location that we are aware of in the United States in terms of a digital equity program is a pretty good step forward.
Thank you. And this will be my last question. Did you guys do any kind of financial analysis with respect to the alternative of making this a municipally owned broadband utility? Like how much money is being left on the table by not doing it yourself or ourselves?
Can you clarify what you mean by how much money is being left on the table?
Well, I mean, could the city have formed a municipal board that made the investment, paid itself back, paid the bonds back to do the construction yourselves, and then brought in revenue from your own ISP?
Essentially do it as an authority rather than.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a utility.
Right, no, that's exactly.
Yeah, my initial response to that is that was something that we have entertained as an option. But the likelihood of success of that is pretty limited. The major contributing factors to municipal broadband success are that the city is the owner of the electric utility and thus has access to all of the existing electric poles at a low or zero cost. And those locations are in states that are adversarial to municipal broadband. So I think the risk involved in that kind of undertaking, in Indiana are pretty high. And the cost is is pretty high as well. There's a number of other factors that would contribute to that, but it doesn't seem like a viable option for us, unless somebody has a magic wand and can relocate us to.
To be a $50 million investment instead of $1 million.
And Beth has raised her hand
Yeah.
again.
Hi, folks. I just wanted to jump in to add that according to Controller Underwood, that would also exceed our ability, our bonding capacity, what's projected to be needed for that kind of build. And Scott Lehman had shared with Rick and I recently an article involving the Fort Collins, Colorado build. And the number in that article for their cost was $143 million. Now, I know there are differences in terms of the city, but in any event, it sounds like there would also be that kind of constraint on just our flat out ability to bond for it.
Thank you.
If I can just,
Who was it? Go ahead.
I was just going to add to that on Rick's point, the Fort Collins project, they do own their own municipality, and over half of that fiber is placed in existing conduit that the city owned as the utility owner.
Right, yeah, they are an electric.
But I wanted to acknowledge the time that it's 5 o'clock.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We're good. I just wasn't sure about. Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt. Good.
I did have a question. That is, if the project would fail economically after a period of time, but who would own the infrastructure, residual infrastructure? Is it something that the city could take over? Not necessarily we'd want to, but we have the right to under the contract.
Yeah,
Own it
yes.
or purchase it or something like that. So that it's not just
Yes,
sitting there like.
in our agreement, we would take possession of the.
There's several steps there, obviously,
Right.
with bankruptcy and like things that are all in place, but yeah, sure.
Other questions from commission members? If not,
As part of the public hearing, yeah, we have to accept public comments.
Right. so we'd like
Please
to open up
the floor
to public comment. I'm going to ask for any public comments for the people that are physically present first, and then we will shift to those who are joined virtually. So anybody in the room Want to make any public comments, Larry?
I will. I'll just, no correction. I just want to note that, so notice for this public hearing was published on June 3rd, Friday, June 3rd. They had until yesterday at 5 p.m. to give me comments. I received no public comments on this. So I'm just reporting that to the board, but anybody who's in the room would like to.
But I think we'd be willing to listen to any comments. Anybody might have.
Professor Sommer, thank you.
Oh, please, Kurt, not as.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is Christopher Review from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, and I think there is a lot to be excited on this particular initiative, a robust digital equity initiative. It's exciting. We know how important high-speed internet is for our careers and those remote learning days. And any company willing to put 50 million in here in Bloomington is a good thing. But we just had a couple things that we were a little unsure on just how this enhances the economic growth and stimulates redevelopment as a whole. We heard a lot about that segment of the population that is not hooked up to high-speed internet by their own volition. And we haven't heard a lot about the business and how this is going to help small businesses as we move forward with a very large construction project with an economy that's already hurting as far as inflationary concerns with getting employees there. So we were just hoping to make sure that we're kind of thinking about this holistically as an economic development project, not strictly on the robust digital equity initiative, which we do find important and very valuable, but just make sure this is widespread and that those concerns are sort of heard as we move forward in this process. Thank you.
Notice you were present. Do we have any comments from those who are attending the meeting virtually?
Yeah, I mean, I can expand on it in terms of the economic benefits. Obviously, in bringing this project to the city, we're going to be hiring a lot of local construction resources to build this network. One of the things that will continue for years, even decades afterwards, is every time we need to connect a new subscriber to our network, that is going to be a construction element that needs to take place from that public right-of-way network we construct into the home or business. And that's a local contract. So that's a local job that will be created in market to perform that work. In terms of the small businesses in general, or any businesses, one of the things that's critical to being able to recruit people into business is the ability to give them some flexibility in where they work. And if you're on a 25/3 or a 100/10 connection, that's not sufficient enough to be on a call or in a work environment. And we want to make that bandwidth available so small businesses can allow their employees flexibility if they need to stay at home for a day, or if they want to work a standard schedule, 2 days in the office, 3 days at home. And then finally, it allows people from Bloomington to hold their jobs and maybe be remote into other markets. They'll have the bandwidth that's required to be a true engaged remote worker. And that can only be done with proper bandwidth, especially if you have competing interests in the household, which could be a kid at home doing homework. It could be a sibling who's, watching Netflix, somebody who's gaming. If there's a competing interest, the ability of that remote worker who lives in Bloomington but may be employed in a different location will be inhibited, which will potentially prevent them from being able to reliably work from a different location.
Other comments from those attending virtually?
And does anybody raise their hand or
I'm not saying
enter
it.
anything into the chat?
No.
Well, if I do a last call for comments, so
If I can echo something on talent. I mean, talent attraction, talent retention is a huge issue. There's a major push at the state right now, race for talent. There's legislation that just passed where they are setting up to be able to attract and retain talent. Remote workers are an area of focus for that. So the point about having the necessary infrastructure in place to really make that happen and facilitate that. As you all know, we have many more jobs available in Bloomington than we have people. We have to get people, we have to have talent come to Indiana from outside the state. We have to retain talent here. And to some degree, that talent will end up working for a combination of local opportunities and remote opportunities. And it's an area of growth for us and focus that we're all interested in cultivating, and I think is critically important to Bloomington and the county and the region's ability to be successful in the long term. I think the state's putting a lot of resources behind that. And so
Any other comments? Seeing none, we move to the resolution, I believe. Yes?
We could talk about it. Oh, I'm happy to.
I'm not sure who's. Jane, Larry,
Honest.
Vanessa.
Larry, I think you should present it.
Of course, so this agreement is a resolution approving and authorizing certain actions and proceedings with respect to a certain proposed conditional project expenditure agreement. So as I mentioned before, the conditional project expenditure agreement here pledges the maximum contribution amount, which is 95% of the TIF proceeds in the event that an allocation area, a Meridian TIF allocation area is created upon approval by the council. Subject to the terms of that expenditure agreement that has a lifespan of 20 years, which is under the statutory authority that you all have. We estimate that the project will result not only in the diversification of the industry for all the reasons that we heard in terms of open access network, digital equity. We also estimate that it'll bring approximately at least 10 new jobs to the area with a payroll of about $1.1 billion annually. And we'll have for the creation and retention of business opportunities in the city of Bloomington. As we've heard, we have held the public hearing today, June 14th, 2022. The findings as far as this particular resolution, again, is that you have considered the potential material adverse competitive effect, and that you have overall found that this is serves the genuine public purpose and is for the benefit of the health and general welfare of the city, based on everything that you've heard. Therefore, you would hereby approve all of the documents in terms of the conditional expenditure agreement, the financing agreement, which is its corollary, and you would recommend that to be approved in ordinance by the common council of the state.
Nice.
I'll move the adoption of resolution 22.
I'll second.
So now, questions, comments? Solution? I'll reiterate. Sorry, I ask this almost every time. Are there any risks that we're not seeing, that we haven't discussed, that we should be aware of? The only risks that I have been able to identify, the potential expenditure of $1 million in subsidizing activity for citizens, and it appears to me that the rest of it is receiving the abatement under the tip. Am I missing it? Okay, thank you.
Can I try to address that or follow on to that a little bit? And unfortunately, I just saw the master development agreement today. I haven't had a chance to go through all of it yet, but does it essentially prevent the city from deciding to do a municipal broadband utility during that period, 5 years, 7 years, etc.?
I don't believe so, but I'll let that's the case, but perhaps weigh in on that.
Step away.
Okay.
I mean, I did see something in the MDA that had to do with it. It seemed to say that basically anybody else that could provide all of the same things that Meridian is providing could also essentially compete. Is that the kind of the way you understand it?
Right, and an entity that, would agree to the, same terms, we would support, support that. On the municipal side, there's nothing in the agreement that prohibits us from doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we so chose.
I just wanted to, in terms of risk, when you're foregoing options. That's all.
Right. Any other questions from the commission? Then I think we're ready to vote, right? So all in favor of the resolution, please say aye. We need a roll call. I'm sorry.
We don't need roll call. There's no one participating electronically, so you can switch. If you'd like to do roll call, then you're also free to.
I think it was. So. Say aye, please.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? We have a unanimous approval of resolution. Now we need to talk about financing.
No, that was.
So that was it, just the resolution.
Part of the resolution.
I see two things.
Oh, yeah, I apologize. It was just 2 points about one was attendance and one was this resolution.
Great.
But this does conclude the public hearing aspect of the meeting. So you all know, council will be considering this tomorrow night at its public meeting as well. And we will forward to report to the director. Just as per statute. That's a pretty long period of time.
All right, so we move to the abatement report.
This is the really exciting part.
Yes.
Well, Buckle up.
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat for this one.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask a procedural question?
Yeah.
Are we gonna need to vote on this tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Evidently, we're out of runway on this, right, Larry?
Yeah, so by statute, the common council has 45 days from the date that they first received the filings from the deadline was May 15th. They're taking a vacation starting tomorrow after tomorrow's meeting, and so we
Really
would
need it.
run about 45 days where they'd be powerless to act on it. So
So we're working around the city council.
Jane and Alex are going to go through this quickly,
Oh, goodness.
correct?
Well, the good news is, I think everybody's gone through this perhaps once already, so we have a whole bunch of preamble in the presentation that was really.
I
designed
wonder
for-
too, if we might start with the meat of the summary economic impact slides and not cover the procedural stuff.
Is that okay with the commission members?
I
mean, it's
have
the
council
same
meeting
thing I
at
read.
5:30, which is why.
Okay,
We've all. been through this.
Yes. Give us the meat.
okay,
Sorry to take
Yep.
the
that's
take the
all right.
thunder out of your presentation.
Well,
For a lot of us, this is an update.
Just a quick summary. I mean, this is basically once a year, we get forms from the tax abatement recipients. We have to assess whether or not they're compliant. We do a kind of full-out presentation to council. We remind them of the whole thing. Then there's just kind of like summary information that here's the total of the impact. And then we do a case by case. We can fly through that in the interest of time. But the short answer is that there is nobody that is not compliant. There are a couple where we are substantially compliant rather than fully compliant, and so we just kind of fly through them.
okay, so we're gonna dive right into the summary economic impact slides. This slide itemizes or categorizes the abatements by mixed use, commercial, real, commercial, personal, and residential. And you can see that actual new investment, vested proposed new investment on SB ones by 126 million. So just overall, we're finding compliance there. These abatements have added and retained 3,467 jobs with an average 2021 salary of $53,838. We're going to get into those salary numbers a little more on specific abatements. Total AV of abatement projects is nearly $140 million. Improvements only. This slide summarizes the but-for clause, and I think we're familiar with that. Is it okay? And then we get into the meat and potatoes. So Southern Knoll on West 3rd Street is a 31 unit affordable housing complex. All of Southern Knoll's units are affordable to households at or below 80% AMI. At least 75% of the units are at 60% AMI. 7 units are set aside as permanent supportive housing for individuals experiencing homelessness. 7 are set aside for individuals with developmental disabilities. The property is 100% occupied. And this year, I did do a review and get data from hand about compliance on those affordable units for all the properties. This property is in its second year of abatement at 98%. It exceeds the proposed benefits on the CF1 and capital investments, new employment, and new salaries. It is compliant with the affordability requirements. AV on the property is $1.4 million. Staff finds this abatement to be compliant. Union at Crescent is a 146 unit mixed affordable and market rate housing development. No less than 70% or 102 units are allocated to households with incomes at or below 60% of AMI. No less than 20% of the units are market rate. Union at Crescent is in year 3 of its abatement. It has met compliance requirements for capital investment, jobs created, and has exceeded salary requirements. Staff, again, confirm compliance through hand on the affordable units. Assessed value on improvements is $5,651,000. Staff finds this abatement to be compliant.
When you say assessed value, you mean the
Improvements only, yeah, every time. Here's Clark. Urban Station is a mixed-use building with 7,000 square feet of commercial space and 148 beds. No less than 15 bedrooms are allocated to households with incomes at or below 80% AMI. Rent for affordable units may not exceed 85% of the market rate. The affordability is required to be in place for 99 years. Urban Station is in year 5 of its abatement. It has exceeded capital investment requirements. Based on its CF1, it has not met the threshold of jobs created or retained. During 2021, it was 1 unit shy of meeting its affordability compliance and has been working with hand to come into compliance by the new lease cycle on August 1st. Its current AV on improvements is $16,386,400. City staff recommends a finding of substantial compliance for this abatement. We can go back, talk about that one. The Foundry is a mixed-use building with 13,000 square feet of commercial space on 1st and 2nd floor, residential condominiums above, which are excluded from the abatement. The Foundry is in year 3 of its real property abatement. It was also approved for personal property abatement, but given changes in technology, they're no longer pursuing the personal property. The Foundry has exceeded capital investment requirements, its commitment to jobs retained and created, and their related salaries. Its current AV on improvements is $14,857,400. Staff finds this abatement to be compliant. Hoosier Energy holds a real property abatement for its LEED certified headquarters on the southwest side of Bloomington. It is in year 5 of its abatement. It has exceeded capital investment, jobs retained, and salary requirements. Its AV on improvements is $9,659,500. Staff finds this abatement to be compliant. The Woolery Mill holds a real property abatement for its development on South Keg Road. Where do we go from here? Its public benefit is the renovation of an abandoned limestone mill into a mixed-use facility. Woolery Ventures completed phase 1, the event space, in May 2019. They have met their investment and construction timeline for phase 1 requirements. The Woolery is in year 3 of its abatement. It has exceeded requirements for capital investment, new employment, and new salaries. Current AV on improvements is $2,057,700. Catalent holds 2 active abatements, 1506 for personal property and 1904 for both real and personal property. These abatements cover separate expansion phases and employee growth projections. The city's initial abatement was with Cook Pharmica, which was acquired by Catalent. The real and personal property abatements have distinct phases. CF1s report blended employment figures across all abatements. CF1 data reflects total annual payroll and year-end headcount. Catalent's month-to-month average salary exceeded $62,000. Projected job growth significantly exceeds commitments. And Catalent's 2022 tax abatement is pending and therefore not included in the compliance assessment. So abatement 1506 on personal property is in year 4 of 10. New personal property investment exceeded SB1 commitments. Current AV is on improvements is $7,671,097. The idea. Abatement 1904 on real property is in year 1 and exceeded capital investment commitments. Abatement 1904 on personal property is in year 2 and also exceeded SB1 capital investment commitments. Current AV on improvements for 1904 is almost $82 million. This slide outlines Catalent's job growth across all active abatements. Job growth exceeds commitments on both retained and new employment. As of the filing of the CF1, total site headcount was 3,129 employees. This slide addresses salary growth across all 3. Well, yeah, I waffled out whether to call it 2 or 3 abatements. We'll say 2 abatements. It has exceeded targets on total salaries and new salaries. Reported retained salaries skew low because Catalent is reporting a total annual salary against the year-end headcount. Given the fast pace of growth, this decreases the average salary rate, according to their director of HR. Catalent confirms that when monthly headcount and monthly payroll are taken together, the average wage of Catalent employees is $62,000.
Does everybody understand what that concept?
Okay. So in summary, personal property capital investments for 1506 exceed commitments. Real and personal investments for 1904 exceed commitments. Cumulative employment growth significantly exceed commitments. CF1 data reflects total annual payroll and year-end headcount. Catalent's month-to-month average salary exceeds 62,000. Therefore, staff recommends a finding of substantial compliance for Catalent across all abatements. Okay, moving into pending or not yet activated abatements, we have Real America, which is a real property abatement adjacent to Switchyard Park for 48 affordable units with 10 fully ADA units reserved for individuals working with Stone Belt. This gives the breakdown of AMI and then 16 market rate units help their math work as a developer but are excluded from the abatement. And then 2022-06 is our newest abatement, approved new real and personal property abatement for Catalent. Sorry, that wasn't a sentence. For a total capital investment of $350 million and 1,000 jobs at an average salary of $32 per hour, which equals $66,560. In 2021, other EDC activity included January, the RAD Phase 2 inducement resolution for Crestmont. In May, the EDC approved resolution 2102 for the ERA designation and 2103 for the tax abatement recommendation in support of retreat at the Switchyard. In August, EDC approved economic development revenue bonds for Phase 2 of Crestmont renovation, which were, I guess, was resolution 2105. And in December, you approved economic development revenue bonds for the renovation of Country View Apartments on South Rockport Road. And that's it. We're happy to take any questions.
We should go back maybe and talk about the substantial compliance judgment on
Urban Station.
Yeah.
So, apologies if it's making me sick. So, yeah, I think we summarized that they exceeded capital investment, but it's really in jobs and salaries that they fell short. We are still waiting on, I mean, it's okay if I just lay it all out there.
Yeah, I mean, there are 2 things. One is there's incomplete information we're just waiting for. The second thing I think is also the judgment that, this was before Jane had brought forward the idea of revising tax abatement guidelines where jobs were kind of this thing inside of a tax abatement judgment, even though in this particular case, this was really bad affordable housing, right? And until that revision was made, which was what, 2021?
Right.
Jobs became a criteria. And so there's also a judgment that says like the intent of this thing is really bad affordable housing. It wasn't really bad jobs, but we do recognize that they said that they were going to do some stuff on jobs and they haven't done it. So we're waiting for better information from them to see if, whether that's how far off that is. But because this is really such an emphasis on affordable housing, we thought, okay, the capital investment, the affordable housing, they're basically where they need to be. Therefore, we feel that the intent of the tax abatement.
And I've been wrangling filers this year because there is quite a bit of confusion on their part about how to report the jobs numbers, and the new jobs is confusing for filers. So, I'm concerned that they think that we want to know what new jobs they added in 2021, whereas the CF1 really only cares what they've added since the start of the abatement. So,
We have that same issue in the county all the time, that abatement receivers have a hard time understanding exactly what's going on.
so that's sort of how we wound up on substantially compliant, even though it looks rocky based on this table.
I wonder if you can collect it, since you collect the data annually, I wonder if you can collect it in such a way. You can turn it in that way.
It's a
And your
state
spreadsheet
form.
can figure it out.
Yeah,
State form.
that's a state form, so we actually.
Oh, it's a state form.
Yeah. So we can't mess with it too much. And the other thing I guess we would say is in terms of just the overall, obviously the Catalan stuff is going to get a lot of scrutiny because of the most recent tax abatement, right? We expect that. There was some information in Reddit about what, are they shedding employees and all that? There was some confusion about that. They are absolutely committed to the capital investment of the next tax abatement. They're also committed to the job growth and Moderna was just approved today, so, I mean, there's clearly, that was, confusing to the market, but they are absolutely committed to the growth and to, the facility and building it out. So we've gotten confirmation of that. The mayor received a call from the general manager. We've gotten confirmation about the investment capital. And we expect that that investment to happen into 2023 and then probably activating the tax payment.
Any other questions? I know, Jeff, you're looking at 5:30. Want to be to another place, so,
Here at 527, no pressure.
No, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We've done it a lot before.
everybody good? So we need a motion and a second, please.
How do you want the motion to be, since there's a mixture of compliance?
It would be a recommendation from staff, so you could approve or. Staff and so far.
As stated.
Staff is, yeah, as stated. I find everybody's sliders upstairs.
I move we approve the recommendations from staff as presented.
Comments, questions? If none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Unanimous on that one too.
I think Jane just broke a land speed.
And
Recording
is good in
stopped.
order? You think we're good in order? If not, we are adjourned.